You know when somebody explains squatting like butter, X joint felt like butter, hips felt like butter, knees felt like butter, shoulders felt like butter. I think that's a very, very good description, something that we've all felt when a movement feels like butter, like just smooth, no painful, lumpy, poppy, crackly parts of the lift. When everything just feels beautiful. Well, this is what I would say that I felt after I did this before I did squats. So I did these horse stance. I did the horse stance for 7 lots of 1 minute. I think this was like set number 3 that I recorded here. And you can see that I'm not exactly comfortable in this position. I'm watching this and I'm like, the knees are too far in. I cannot physically abduct my knees or externally rotate my knees any further. I'm just not very good in anything wide. My bench press, for years, I did it narrow. That felt good. For years, I did squats narrow. Then when I tried to do, a wider stance, I felt like my hips were going to pop out of their sockets. My shoulders felt like they were going to pop up when I did wide. I don't know what it is. Everything I do is narrow. Deadlift is narrow. Squat is narrow. Bench is narrow. This year, I've introduced wide grip bench press, and it's taken me a little while, but I've kind of warmed up and I've gotten a lot better doing that. But I think my hips, and probably why they hurt, is something to do with my inability to feel comfortable in a wide stance squat. And now you can load this position, but loading something that is this crappy is only going to bring more dysfunction. I think the horse stance is a beautiful introduction into wide stance. You can see how the knees want to buckle in. I'm fighting them so hard. The adductors are tight. They want to push me in. And so there's a fair bit of internal rotation, as I'm doing this. I've watched some videos of monks do it, and people that are really, really amazing at horse stance, and they look fully upright. Hips are so freaking wide. I can just imagine how they feel when they squat and when they do anything lower body. If you can master the horse stance, I think it's a great introduction into just general movement of the lower body. After that, my squats felt good. I felt like I had so much more mobility than I needed for a squat. Although I did feel weaker, even though it felt like butter, I did feel like it taxed my legs a little bit, and so I felt a little bit fatigued going into the squats. Now, I'm only doing 1 minute stints with this. 1 minute. And I think most people start off with 1 minute. I've heard people doing 10 minutes. Now, I don't know how long it would take somebody to get that good, but I'm far away from that. I've heard also, I don't know whether this is true, like, the Shaolin monks, man, holding it for an hour or something like that, like even longer. Like, I don't know what those boys are about, man, but that's insanity, absolute insanity. Obviously, those boys are probably much lighter, very, very thin people, especially when you get to learn how they live their life in general. It's not, eating huge amounts of food. So they're all like very, light frame people. But regardless, 10 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, I can't even imagine that. I got so involved in this in my mind as I was doing this that I completely forgot my original plan, which was to come in and do overhead squats after I did the horse stance. I only thought about that when I was like 3/4 of the way through the session, and I was like doing some sort of rowing. That I was like, damn, I forgot about it. It'll have to be another day now. But I think that's another thing which I need to struggle with. The overhead squat forces you to be upright. And when you have this weight over the top of your head, you will do anything and everything to make sure that your torso is as vertical as possible. And so for me, that involves wider stance. If I go narrow, I go into the hip hinge business, which gets brutally punished in an overhead squat. Your shoulders cannot overcome the bar if you are that leaned over. So wide stance, horse stance, wide stance, overhead squat. So there's a bit going on there which helps me. And this feeling of horse stance has also reminded me of when I did the bands around the knees. That felt unbelievable as well. But I think I need to get bands which are a little bit more forgiving so I can take a wider stance. The bands that I have, they're basically a hip circle. And they are very, very tough. Like you can't separate them much at all. And so they force you into this narrow stance. And so I would like to be in a more wider stance and then have the bands around my knees or on my thighs. And that will be kind of like a good, leverage for the hips to work through rather than being so tight in. But this wide stance stuff made the hips feel really good. And the other thing the horse stance also do is they hit your quads. They hit your quads, they hit the adductors, they hit the glutes. Man, I mean, I don't want to be absolute in anything I say anymore because I don't know. I simply don't know, and I've corrected myself many, many times. I've felt, so strongly about something, and then like week 2-3 later, I uncover some more information. I'm like, nah, that's not right. And then something else happens. So even though in the moment you might feel so strong about something, you can't be 100% until you really, really give it time. But I feel the wide stance, or as it stands right now, I feel the wide stance involves a lot more musculature and involves a lot more, how should I put this, legs. Go wide stance and it's more legs, because it allows the body to go into a different type of movement pattern. It allows you to go up and down. It essentially deletes half of your femur length in a way, because you're kind of hiding that length of femur to the side. Whereas if you have your heels together and you're squatting that way, the femurs are now going straight up and down, like in front of you. And so you are, especially if you're long-legged, you are really copying a very difficult squat if you do that, because now you are forced to lean over unless you have some godly ankle mobility where you can send half of your damn femur over your toes. That could work, but for most people, that is not something that you have. Especially for me, playing basketball all those years, all of my tendons in my lower legs, the Achilles, all that stuff, like the foot is just so built for jumping and running and sprinting that all of those tendons over time have kind of shortened. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but in basketball sense, that's actually very good. You want stiff tendons because that's kind of what helps you transfer power into the floor. And so, stiff tendons are great, but in the weightlifting world, if you have stiff Achilles, you're pretty much screwed because you're not going to have very good ankle mobility. You're just not. And so in order for you to work around that, you're going to have to go to wider stance, send those knees out, delete some of that femur, pseudo-delete some of that femur to the side, and then you're going to have a better time getting into those legs. Rather than, everything being about lower back, glutes, and hamstrings, which kind of, for me, for the longest time, it's kind of felt like that way. I can squat as much as I want for years, and I would hardly ever feel any quads unless I've done some like stupid amount of work. Then I would feel quads, but then still, that's not the most I'm sore. The most soreness I've ever felt from a squat workout has always been the damn adductors. Those things would just debilitate me, and also glutes. But quads, I would feel it. But like, in order for my glutes to feel, let's say 3 out of 10 soreness, my adductors need to be 12 out of 10 sore. You know what I mean? Like, so you can see what's driving the movement. But this horse stance business, I'm sitting here right now talking to you, and I'm feeling my quads, especially the medial quads, the medialis. I'm definitely feeling that right near the knee. And that makes sense, right? Because my knees were kind of collapsing in, and probably, that particular part of the quad was working more. But if I was able to like really abduct and do it properly, then I'd probably feel different stuff. And also I felt glutes. Now, I don't know if it's glutes or whether it's the piriformis. Now, the piriformis is one of those muscles that's kind of like in the glute complex. And its number one thing is to like rotate the femur out. And all of this stuff, is very hard to kind of understand. But depending on the angle of your hip flexion, where you are in the squat, is where different muscles have better leverages to act upon the femur. So if you're standing really upright and you just turn your foot out, I think that's piriformis right at the top. And right like at the bottom where we do the horse stance, it's also piriformis, but there's also now like huge demands on the glute max, to help with hip extension or resisting hip flexion further. So, all of these like muscles kind of hand power over as you go through the ranges of motion. Which is very interesting. It kind of makes the whole thing fluid, right? It's kind of like a handover from one muscle to the next as the leverages and the physics changes as you kind of go through a motion. But after I did all of that, I got into the back workout and I did a lot of stuff, man. I did a whole host of things, man. I did 5 sets of supinated barbell rows. Then I did 5 sets of pronated. Went over to the amazing machine for pullovers. I did that. That's unbelievable. I did like 5 sets there. I love that machine. Always makes me super sore. And then I tried to do some more stuff. I ended up trying the T-bar row, but my grip was spent. Couldn't do much there. But then I ended up doing something I didn't record, which was this ISO pull-down machine, which is like a weird angle, and it was targeting the lats really nicely. So I did that for a few sets as well, and then I went home. But I am absolutely exhausted. I've got a name to mention, Lazar. Lazar is the latest Patreon supporter of mine. Lazar, man, it's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute honor to have your support. The support of the channel, like all these names that we see in these credits, a lot of names have come and gone, which is perfectly fine. People move on. People support me for a little bit and then they move on. I decided to leave all the names there. And Lazar, your name is going to be on this video and all the next videos as long as I keep doing that. So I thank you for the support, man. It really means a lot. And thank you for also the nice words. It's really cool to see Balkan names all over the world. You're in Germany now. I'm in Australia. There's the Balkans have exploded into many different parts of the world because of all the troubles through that region. I'm not sure actually if you're in Germany because of trouble there or not, but I certainly am in Australia because of the war and all that stuff. So Lazar, man, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to all the other guys that are on here supporting me in many different ways, through Patreon, through comments, through watching the videos. Still, after all these years, I still have to pinch myself and think to myself, wow, this is a lot of people caring about what I have to say, which is crazy to me, man. It really is. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.